to vent about a problem at work. But in the middle of the conversation, his wife dropped a line that would change everything. Since we're on the subject of uncomfortable things, my boss wants me to go with him on a work trip. From that moment on, suspicion took root. What seemed like a simple professional commitment began to show strange signs. Evasive answers, silent tears, a small child who didn't want his mother to go, and a trip that would leave deep scars. This true story reveals what happens when silence speaks louder than words. A mixture of guilt, choices, and consequences that transformed an entire marriage. If this story has you hooked already, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and brace yourself, because the ending will surprise you. There are days when all you want is to disappear from the world for a few hours. To walk through the door, kick off your shoes, collapse onto the sofa, and forget that life exists beyond your front door. That day, for me, was exactly one of those days. A plea for a truce. Work had been hell. My supervisor had called me out in front of the entire team, raising his voice as if I were a lost intern on his first day, laying into me for a report that Tiago had forgotten to turn in. And me, I just stood there, silent, feigning professionalism, clenching my jaw to hold back the anger, my dignity in pieces. I got home later than usual. Larissa was in the kitchen, stirring a pot on the stove. She was wearing those old shorts that only made an appearance when comfort won out over everything else, her hair tied up in a messy bun. For some reason, that image gave me a sense of peace. I let out a long sigh, dropped my backpack on the floor, and walked over to her. "Today was brutal," I said. She turned her head slowly, the spoon still in her hand. "I got completely reamed out at work for a mistake that wasn't even mine. Tiago forgot to send a report, and the boss destroyed me in front of everyone. I felt like an idiot." I waited for a reaction. A "really?" A "that sucks." A "are you okay?" Anything that showed a minimum of empathy. But what came next was completely out of context. Larissa turned off the stove, tapped the spoon on the rim of the pot, and said, "Since we're talking about uncomfortable things, my boss wants me to go with him on a work trip." Surgical. As if she'd been saving it, waiting to drop it, at the exact moment I was too broken to react properly. I stood there, frozen, trying to process if I'd heard her correctly. "A trip? What do you mean, a trip?" She walked to the counter, got a glass, and poured herself some water. "There's a company event in another city. He wants me to go and help with the logistics. Hotel, schedule, reception. Larissa, you're a secretary. Since when is that part of your job?" She shrugged. "Since he asked." Something was wrong. I couldn't explain it, but the way she spoke wasn't normal. It was too calculated, as if every word had been rehearsed before it was spoken. The house fell silent. The only sounds were the ticking of the clock on the wall and the sizzle of the still hot pan. I didn't say another word. I went back to the living room, threw myself on the sofa, and closed my eyes. But the rest I so desperately needed had already vanished. Her words weren't just an announcement, they were a landmark, a before and an after. Later, during dinner, I tried to bring it up again. "So, this trip, is there a date yet?" She answered without looking up from her plate. "Not yet. He said he'll confirm by the end of the week." After that, silence. Each of us trapped in our own corner of our minds. When it was time for bed, she turned to her side and was asleep almost instantly, as if she'd completed her mission. Drop the bomb, walk away. I stayed awake for hours. The light from the street lamp outside drew a pale crescent on the ceiling. The hands of the clock seemed louder than ever, and my mind just kept repeating the same questions. Why now? Why like this? Why was she so calm? I know my wife. I know the way she looks at me. And that night, she was hiding something. After that one sentence, dropped in the middle of our kitchen, my boss wants me to go with him on a work trip. Things didn't collapse all at once. No, they unraveled slowly, like a room that gets messy without anyone noticing. A glass out of place, a shirt left on a chair, a shoe in the middle of the floor. Until one day, you look around and you don't recognize the space anymore. She said the trip would be in 3 months. It's a big event. It needs to be planned in advance, she explained, her eyes glued to her phone as she spoke. 3 months, 90 days. It seemed far away. But after that, time started to behave differently. It crawled when I was near her and flew by when I was trying to understand what was happening. For the first few days, I swallowed my discomfort. I tried to be rational, to understand that sometimes work demands sacrifices, that it was just a trip, that it wasn't about me. But the more I pretended everything was fine, the more her small gestures dismantled me. She started coming home later. She said her boss was demanding more. Spreadsheets, after-hours meetings, dinners with the team. But she never said who was at these dinners. So who else was there? I'd ask, trying to sound casual. The people from the department. Which people? She would drop her fork on the counter. Andre, please, what do you want? A detailed report? In the third week, we had a huge fight. I raised my voice. She shot back. Her voice rose too. We said hurtful things. Things that had nothing to do with the trip. They were stored up things, old, unresolved issues, muffled frustrations. 2 days later, in the middle of a Sunday lunch that was pretending to be normal, she said, I mentioned to Raphael that we've been fighting. I stopped chewing. You talked to him about it? I just mentioned it. He noticed I was acting strange. And what did he say? He said that's how marriage is, that everything will work out soon. She paused, adjusting the napkin on her lap. He said it with a smile, with that calm way he has. That pierced me. That's how marriage is. I don't know what hurt more. The fact that she'd taken our problem to him, or the way he'd responded, like someone watching a fire, calmly saying the smoke will clear soon. Right there, my mind started connecting the dots. Raphael. He was always someone she praised. Kind, polite, professional. Words that used to just pass me by. But not anymore. Now, I saw something else. I saw someone who knew exactly where to press. The following months were a cycle. Failed attempts at reconciliation. Relapses into silence and suspicion. Good days, followed by heavy nights. Sometimes, she was sweet to me. She'd fix my plate, laugh at our old inside jokes. She was trying, I think, to salvage something. Other times she seemed distant, her gaze lost, her phone always nearby, always face down. One day, I heard her voice on speakerphone. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. She didn't notice me. A man's voice was saying, relax. When the trip comes, You'll see how good it will be for you. A change of scenery. She laughed, a short, quiet laugh. It wasn't a laugh at a joke. It was a laugh of complicity. I closed the door slowly, without a sound. I stood there in the hallway, motionless. In that instant, I understood. She was still here, inside our home, but a part of her had already left a long time ago. The tension was constant, invisible, but heavy. The kind of weight that doesn't crush you all at once, but spreads out slowly, hiding in the corners of the house, in the pauses between sentences, in the automatic way you fold a towel after a shower. There was a month left until the trip. Larissa kept saying she still didn't know if she was going, but it was a lie. I could see it in her eyes, in the way she'd look away whenever I asked. So, have they decided on a date? Or who's actually going? She'd say her boss was still finalizing the details, but the truth was, she already knew. What she didn't know was how to deal with me before she left. It's strange when the person sleeping next to you starts to feel like a visitor. She was there physically, but she wasn't present. It was just a facade, a rehearsed role, and I pretended to believe it. I tried not to seem like I was policing her life, but every muffled laugh, every message answered too quickly, every whisper on the phone ate away at me. One evening, our son, Lucas, sat beside me while I was washing the dishes. Is mommy still going on her trip? Maybe. Is she going alone? I don't know. Will she be back soon? I think so. I wish she would stay. Me too. Later, he showed me a drawing he'd made at school. The three of us holding hands. In the corner of the page, in that clumsy child's handwriting, it said, Mommy not going. I showed the drawing to Larissa. She froze. She stared at it for a few seconds without saying anything. Then she left the room and locked herself in the bathroom for almost an hour. She was crying. I could hear her. That night, she came to bed and wrapped her arms around me from behind, holding on tight, like someone trying to hold on to something that's already slipping away. You know I love you, right? It took me a moment to answer. I know, but I didn't. The truth was, I didn't know anything anymore. I started noticing the details, the small, everyday betrayals. The suitcase, which hadn't even existed before, was now tucked away at the back of the closet, disguised, but present. It was being packed, little by little, as if each object placed inside was a choice made in silence. Perfume, documents, a dress she hadn't worn in months, travel-sized moisturizer, everything arranged with the kind of care you only take when you're going somewhere that matters. And then came the detail that killed any remaining doubt. She left her phone charging in the living room. She was asleep. The screen lit up with a notification. The name was saved as Our Work. The message appeared in full. Relax. When this trip comes, you'll understand how much you needed this. That hurt more than any physical betrayal. It wasn't the content, it was the tone, an intimacy disguised as support, the feigned lightness of someone who had already crossed the line. I went back to the bedroom. I lay down beside her and stared at the ceiling. She was sleeping, breathing deeply like someone carrying the weight of the world. And I, with my heart racing, realized it. What separated us was no longer the fear of the trip. It was what the trip meant. She wasn't leaving for 3 days. She was escaping us. That Friday morning dawned with a different kind of silence. It wasn't the silence of a peaceful home. It was the kind of silence that comes before a storm. Those heavy seconds before the thunder cracks. Larissa woke up before me. When I got up, I found her in the kitchen, still in her pajamas, stirring a spoon inside an empty cup. There was no coffee, no bread on the table, just her, sitting there, motionless, as if she didn't know how to start the day. Is everything okay? I asked, already knowing the answer. She took a long time to reply. My head is a mess. Because of the trip? She shrugged. Because of everything. Throughout the day, I noticed she couldn't sit still. She organized drawers she never touched. She folded clothes twice. She played the same sad song on her phone over and over, staring out the window as if waiting for something to happen. I had already understood. She didn't want to go, but she didn't want to stay either. And that was the most dangerous kind of indecision. In the late afternoon, I took Lucas out to the market. When we came back, we passed by the bedroom door, and he stopped. The suitcase was open on the bed. It was no longer an early preparation. It was a confirmation. She, she's really going? He asked. I couldn't answer. At dinner, the atmosphere was so forced that even the food seemed out of place. Larissa tried to feign normalcy. She made lasagna, Lucas's favorite. Mine too. But no one really ate. Lucas, his restless eyes darting around, just pushed his fork through the food on his plate. Mommy, why do you have to go? She hesitated. Because it's an important job. But aren't we important too? Silence. The kind that hurts more than any fight. She lowered her head, her eyes welling up. It's just for a little while. When I get back, we'll do something special together, okay? Lucas nodded. But I saw it. He didn't believe her, and neither did I. That night, she came to me on the sofa. Can we talk? Aren't we talking now? For real? I nodded. She sat beside me. I feel so lost. You feel guilty. Her eyes widened. It's not that. It's exactly that. You think I think you're already gone, I finished for her. Only your body is left. She didn't reply. She just leaned her head back on the sofa and closed her eyes. After a while, she spoke. I dreamed I missed the flight. And were you relieved or frustrated? I woke up crying. On Saturday, we tried to live a normal day. We forced it. We went to the park with Lucas. We took pictures. We laughed with him on the slide. For a moment, it all felt normal. But inside, I knew. It was just another disguised farewell. On the way back, while Lucas was drawing on the living room floor, Larissa pulled me aside. Can we just pretend everything is okay for one more day? Isn't that what we've been doing for months? That night, we were intimate. The kind of intimacy where the body tries to fix what the heart can't reach. It was intense, but different. It wasn't desire. It was desperation. It wasn't reconnection. It was one last, clinging grasp. Afterward, lying side by side, she stared at the ceiling and asked, if I were pregnant, would you ask me not to go? What would that change for you? She took a long time to answer. It would be a legitimate reason to stay. And our son, here, and me, aren't we legitimate enough? She rolled onto her side, her back to me, and the silence between us grew larger than the bed. On Sunday, we went to her mother's house for lunch. Apparently, No one knew about the trip. Larissa talked about her company as if nothing was happening. She smiled too much. She said she was tired, but happy with the new projects. On the way back, Lucas fell asleep in the car. She drove. I just watched. She was quietly singing a song from her teenage years, and it was right there that I realized it. She was already saying goodbye. That night, she sat on the bedroom floor with her suitcase open. She folded her clothes slowly, like someone choosing what to pack for the end of a chapter. I walked in and stood in the doorway. You've already decided, haven't you? She looked at me. I didn't want it to be like this. But it will be. She nodded. I'm leaving tomorrow. But if you ask me to stay, I'll stay. If I have to ask, you're already gone. She zipped the suitcase shut, and I knew right then. What mattered had already been left behind. Monday, 5 in the morning. The alarm went off, but I had been awake for a long time. In fact, I don't think I slept at all. I just closed my eyes and waited for the night to pass. I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathing. Short, heavy, restless. She hadn't slept either. We were just pretending we were still a couple, because the clock had not yet struck the hour of her departure. That was the last morning with everything still standing. But it already felt like it had all come crashing down. When the alarm sounded, Larissa got up slowly. She said nothing. She stepped on the floor, as if each movement might awaken something she didn't want to face. She went straight to the bathroom, closed the door with the delicacy of someone carrying guilt. Minutes later, I heard the tap running, muffled sniffles. She was crying. Time didn't move. It clawed. Every minute dragged, as if it knew this was the last time everything would be as it was. I got up and went to the living room. The suitcase was by the door, discreet, yet its presence screamed. It had been there since the night before, closed with the care of someone packing more than just clothes, packing absences. I sat on the sofa and stared at nothing, or at everything. At 6:20, Larissa came out of the bedroom, dressed, hair tied back, light makeup, that perfume she only wore when she needed to seem stronger than she felt. She looked at me, hesitated, but said nothing. Lucas woke up soon after. He walked out of his room, his eyes heavy with sleep, his steps clumsy. When he saw the suitcase, he stopped in the hallway. Mommy, is today? Today? She forced a smile, that sad smile of someone leaving without knowing if they'll return. It'll be quick, sweetie. Mommy will be back soon. Lucas approached slowly. He squeezed her leg with both hands, rested his head against her. Don't go. Please, don't go. That destroyed me. It was everything I had been holding back, everything I wanted to say, but it came from the mouth of a 6-year-old child. She tried to be firm, but her voice broke. She knelt, hugged her son, and cried with him, I love you, my love. It'll be over in the blink of an eye. But what if you don't blink? She laughed through her tears. Mommy will come back, I promise. I stayed there, sitting, motionless, as if any movement of mine could alter the outcome. But I already knew. Nothing depended on me anymore. She stood up, wiped her eyes, and faced me. Are you sure you don't want to ask me to stay? And you, are you sure you need to go? The question hung in the air for too long. If I don't go, I'll regret it. And if you do? She didn't answer, and her silence was answer enough. At 6:27, the headlights of a car flashed in front of the gate. Engine running, hazard lights on. It was the final warning. She grabbed the suitcase, locking the zipper with a dry click. Lucas ran to the door with a piece of paper in his hands. It was the drawing. The same one as always. The three of us holding hands. The crooked letters, heavy with truth. Mommy, don't go. You forgot, Mommy. She took the paper, looked at it for a second, pressed it against her chest, but said nothing. Before leaving, she came to me, stood there, her eyes on mine, silence. Take care of Lucas, take care of yourself. Always. She reached out her hand as if to touch me, but she stopped halfway, pulled it back, like someone who understands there are things you no longer have the right to reach for. She opened the gate, got in the car. The sound of the door closing seemed louder than it should have. And then, the car pulled away. I stood there with Lucas in my arms, both of us in silence, watching that car disappear. And I understood, in that instant, that she wasn't just going to a work event. She was leaving what we were, what we had once sworn to be. The suitcase carried clothes, but what she left behind was so much heavier. On the first morning of the trip, the house felt bigger, not because Larissa wasn't there, but because the space she left seemed to expand everything that was once routine. There was the smell of absence in the air. You know when you walk into a place and feel that something is missing, even if everything is in its place? It was that. She was missing. But more than that, what she once was, what we once were, was missing. The breakfast table felt like a trench. Me on one side, Lucas on the other. His face still puffy from sleep, mixed with a sadness he couldn't even explain. Daddy, did Mommy go on a plane? Yes, she did. So she's flying right now. I think she's probably landed by now. And is she coming back on a plane too? Yes. But what if she wants to stay there? The question landed like a lead weight. I couldn't answer. He wasn't expecting one either. He just kept eating as if it were just another childish question. But it wasn't. It was perception. He knew. I went to work, but I couldn't focus. I just stared at the computer screen, fiddling with simple tasks. Anything that didn't require me to be present. Because my mind was there, in that hotel room, in the convention hall, in Raphael's company, and her. No message, no call, no "I've arrived." Absolute silence. That night, a short, cold text. Hi, everything's fine here. Busy. I'm tired. Kiss. That kiss was drier than a period. It wasn't affection, it was protocol. I didn't reply right away. I waited. I wanted to see if she would reach out again. She didn't. Meanwhile, on the other side, Larissa was trying to keep her composure. But it wasn't simple. The hotel was beautiful. The food, good. The event, well structured. But inside her, something was out of place. Raphael seemed closer than ever. But now, it was different. No longer subtle. Not just courteous. Direct. On the first night, he invited her to dinner at the hotel restaurant. Said it would be good to relax after a long day. She hesitated, but she accepted. Maybe out of fear. Maybe out of habit. Maybe because she had already said yes too many times without realizing it. During dinner, he was as elegant as ever. Polite. Precisely charming. He spoke of relationships vaguely, like someone testing the waters. No one has a happy marriage all the time. The secret is knowing when to change course. She gave a small smile, but inside, her stomach was churning. The wine tasted bitter, the food tasteless, the atmosphere oppressive. Back in her room, she locked the door firmly, took a long shower, sat on the bed in a towel, staring at the open suitcase, her clothes mixed with her doubts. She turned on her phone, opened the gallery, saw Lucas holding the drawing. Mommy, don't go. But she had gone, and now she didn't know how to come back. She opened her message history, saw the short conversation with her husband. No, I miss you. No demands. That hurt more than if he had screamed. The silence was crueler than any accusation. He was pulling away, and maybe she was letting him. The next morning, Raphael arrived with 2 coffees. He sat beside her during a break between panels and said, "You have this way about you, calm on the outside, but so much going on inside. Your husband must have no idea." She gave an awkward laugh, but she felt a surge of anger, not at him, at herself. That night, the dinner invitation came again. This time, he was direct. "You know, I like your company. I like how you understand me. We don't always have that at home, do we?" She said what she could. "I think I just need to sleep tonight." "Of course. Get some rest." She returned to her room with a war in her heart. She lay in bed, picked up her phone, almost called her husband. Almost, but she didn't. Meanwhile, I was giving Lucas a bath. He was playing with his action figures, inventing stories that started well and ended with someone leaving. Someone always left. After his bath, he lay on my chest and asked, "Is Mommy going to sleep with her boss?" It took me a few seconds to react. "No, buddy. Mommy has her own room. She'll sleep by herself." He nodded, already half asleep. "Then why does it feel like she's been gone for a long time?" In that instant, I realized I no longer knew where Larissa was, or with whom, or why. I only knew that wherever she was no longer the same woman who had walked out that door. And maybe I was no longer the man who had stayed behind. The third day of the trip. On my end, time passed slowly. It dragged, as if the clock had been sabotaged. On her end, I had no idea. Larissa didn't say. Her messages were dry, almost automatic. "All good. Today was tough. Going to rest." She sounded more like a coworker than the woman I had built a life with. That morning, Lucas helped me make the bed. He placed his mother's pillow in the corner with care. Then he said, "I think she'll come back different." "Why?" "Because when you go out with someone, you get a little bit of that person inside you." I stood frozen. That wasn't a sentence from just any child. It was from a boy who was learning about absence with a frightening lucidity. Late that afternoon, my phone buzzed. A message from Julia, a former colleague of Larissa's who had left the company months ago. We hadn't spoken since. "Hi, Andre. Sorry to intrude, but I heard Larissa traveled with Raphael for the event. Be careful with that guy. He has a history. He was involved with an intern on the last trip." It was hushed up. "I'm just telling you because it wouldn't be fair for you not to know." I was silent for several minutes. I reread the message over and over. My fingers were trembling, but my chest was calm. The kind of calm that only comes when the pain stops being a shock and becomes a certainty. I didn't reply. I just stared at the ceiling, thinking about how many times the truth had passed right in front of me, and I had pretended not to see it. Meanwhile, Larissa was in the hotel lobby, phone in her hand, but without the courage to write anything that sounded real. She wasn't sleeping well, wasn't eating right. She had lost her taste for the event. She couldn't even remember the agenda anymore, or why she had agreed to go. Raphael approached in his usual way, confident, smiling, too elegant. Did you manage to rest last night? A little. I was thinking of inviting you to the rooftop bar later. Beautiful view, a glass of wine, nothing serious, just a nice moment to end these intense days. I think I'll stay in my room tonight. Are you sure? Sometimes, the thing we avoid is exactly what we need. She didn't answer, just smiled, a short, uncomfortable smile. He touched her arm lightly, a casual but intentional gesture. It said everything he didn't need to speak. She took a step back. He noticed, and for the first time, he let the mask fall. You know this trip was important for your image, for what you want to build here. You don't have to act like a saint now. The sentence hit her like a slap. Larissa froze. Raphael, with all due respect, I came here to work, and I'm treating you like a professional. But let's be honest, your husband isn't here, and if everything were so perfect, you wouldn't be so divided. It was in that instant that she saw it. It wasn't about her. It never was. It was about his ego, about power, about seduction, control, about testing limits. She left the lobby with her heart in her throat, ran to her room, locked the door, threw herself on the bed, and fell apart. She cried like someone who understands too late that to cross a line, sometimes you don't have to take a step. You just have to stand on the wrong side of it for too long. She opened her phone, wrote a message to her husband, deleted it, wrote another, deleted it again. She just stared at his profile picture, him and Lucas at the beach, smiling as if the world were simple. And her, in the middle of a hotel room that only seemed comfortable to those with a light soul, far from home, far from herself. Fourth day. She was still there, and I was no longer waiting like I had at the beginning. On the first day, I counted the hours. On the second, I analyzed every word of her messages. On the third, I learned from an outsider that this was about much more than a professional trip. On the fourth, something inside me just switched off. It wasn't out of anger, it was exhaustion. I stopped waiting for messages, stopped imagining reunions, stopped fantasizing about making things right. I started to care for Lucas with a sad sort of lightness, like someone who has already understood that some loves don't die from a single blow. They fade slowly, one sigh at a time. That evening, I received an audio message from her. Her voice was rehearsed. Hi, how are you guys? The event was tough today. I missed you both. Give Lucas a kiss for me. Listening to it was like getting a memo from a distant colleague. No intimacy, no truth, just a smoke signal, an attempt to hold on to a thread that had already snapped. I didn't answer, not out of pride, but out of clarity. On the other end, Larissa was counting the minutes, not out of longing, but out of guilt. What had begun as excitement had turned into a cage. Air conditioning, sidelong glances, forced silence. What had seemed like freedom had soured into remorse. And Raphael? Well, Raphael finally showed his true colors. After his advance, Larissa stopped having dinner with the group. She stayed in her room, invented headaches, turned off her phone for hours at a time. She would look at her suitcase and feel the urge to disappear with it. Raphael avoided direct contact, but his eyes would meet hers in the hallways, a silent warning. You know what this means. That night, she stared at the mirror for a long time. She tried to feel the same anger she used to feel for Andre when they fought. But she couldn't. What she felt was fear. Fear of what she would find when she returned. Fear of how she would look him in the eyes. Fear of seeing in Lucas the kind of disappointment a child doesn't yet know how to name, but feels in every cell of his body. The next day, the final meeting, she forced a smile, handed in reports, took a group photo, thanked them for the opportunity. Raphael hugged her with an invasive formality, standing far too close. He said something she pretended not to hear. It was some trip, unforgettable. She pulled away, nauseous. On the flight home, she took the window seat. She didn't want to talk. She made the same journey back with her shoulders slumped, her gaze fixed on nothing. She took Lucas's crumpled drawing from her pocket, smoothing the paper with her fingers. The sentence there seemed more alive than ever. Mommy isn't going. But she had gone, and now she was returning, knowing she wasn't returning to the same home, because there were places she no longer recognized, and one of them was the heart of the man she had left waiting. The car pulled up in front of the house at 6:41 p.m. on a Thursday. The sky was gray, the wind damp. Her suitcase was in the trunk. Her heart was in her throat. From the back seat, Larissa looked out the window for almost 2 minutes before opening the door. She took a deep breath, tried to organize what she would say, rehearsed a smile, tried to believe they could still pick up the pieces. Something. Anything. She got out, took her suitcase, walked slowly through the gate with uncertain steps. On the other side of the door, I already knew she had arrived. I didn't go to greet her, not for revenge, but because there was no longer any rush to see her walk in. She turned the key, opened the door. The house was silent. Lucas was on the sofa, a drawing in his hands. When he saw her, he didn't run to her. He just lifted his eyes. You took a long time, Mommy. She tried to smile, but her eyes trembled. Mommy's here now. He didn't answer. He put the paper in his backpack and went to his room. The sound of his door closing was the first impact of her return. She walked in, found me in the kitchen. I was washing the dinner dishes, too calm for someone who had waited so long. But the kind of calm that is born from an ending brings no peace. Hi. Hi. Silence. The sound of the running water filled the space between us. She set her purse on a chair, took off her shoes, and just stood there. How is he? You saw how he is? And you? She wanted to move closer, but she noticed something had changed in my eyes. Or maybe in the way I no longer looked at her. Can I talk to you after Lucas is asleep? You can. We spent the rest of the evening like two strangers, forced to share the same roof. She tried to help Lucas with his homework. He refused. She tried to put him to bed. He asked for me. When he was finally asleep, she found me on the balcony. I was smoking a cigarette, an old habit that only resurfaces when something needs to be processed. She sat across from me. Her breathing was fast, Her eyes were red, her hands restless. I want to tell you everything, but I don't know where to start. I remained silent. She continued, I got lost, not just on this trip, before, in our fights, in the way I felt invisible. And Raphael, he would show up whenever you pulled away. It was the first time she had said his name without hesitation, and the last time she tried to justify anything. Nothing happened between us, not physically, but everything that could happen before that did. I stubbed out the cigarette. What do you want me to say to that? She started to cry. That there's still time, that we can try. Time left with you in that suitcase. What is it you want to try now? She stood up, came over to me, took my hand. Do you still love me? I took a long time to answer. I looked her straight in the eye and spoke with the kind of honesty that only pain can deliver. I don't know anymore, but I know I can't trust you again. She let go of my hand, and in that moment, she understood. Returning is not the same as being welcomed back, and forgiveness is not an obligation for the one who was left behind. The days following Larissa's return were different than she expected, but deep down, they were exactly as they had to be. There was no punishment, no scandal, no slammed doors, no arguments in the middle of the night. There was only coexistence. Lucas continued to treat her with affection, but not like before. He didn't reject her, but he didn't light up in her presence either. He was kind, but not spontaneous, affectionate, but quiet. One night, as she was tucking him in, he said, The house is sadder now. Why, sweetheart? Because you and Daddy barely look at each other anymore. She squeezed her eyes shut, holding back tears. She kissed his forehead and left the room in silence. In the hallway, leaning against the wall, she understood. Lucas saw everything. He felt everything. And in his own way, he was suffering too. I was still there, but not with her. I was there for Lucas, for the house, for our commitments. But for Larissa, not anymore. I treated her with politeness, but that was all. Direct answers, mechanical smiles, a good morning that said nothing. I tolerated her presence, but I didn't hide my detachment, and she felt it in her bones. She began to move slowly through the house, touched things in silence, avoided talking too much, like someone trying not to take up space. But the worst of it wasn't inside our home. It was out there. At work, the way people looked at her had changed. Some women no longer greeted her as they used to. Others looked at her with a pity disguised as solidarity. The men, they looked at her differently, with malice, with sarcasm, quiet laughs, conversations that cut off when she walked by, indirect invitations. It was all very subtle and all perfectly clear. During her first week back, she overheard a colleague in the hallway say, Who knows what really happened on that trip, right? And the other one answered with a smirk, Once you travel with the boss, you know how it works. She said nothing. She just kept walking, her face burning with shame. But in that moment, it finally hit her. It wasn't just her marriage. She had lost something inside herself. Her image, the trust of others, their respect, and worse, her own self-respect. She tried to carry on as normal, to be efficient, to be useful. But now, everything felt like a defense. And every gesture from Raphael, now cold, busy, indifferent, was a reminder of how she had been used. He didn't treat her badly. He just treated her like anyone else. And that hurt more than any rejection. At home, the nights were long. Sometimes she would sit on the bathroom floor, the shower running, just listening to the sound of the water. She thought about her choices, about time, about everything that could have been avoided with a single sentence. I'm not going. But she hadn't said it, and now everything was a consequence. On Friday night, Lucas made a new drawing, three people holding hands. But between the mother and the father, he had drawn a line, a gap. He gave it to her without explaining. He didn't have to. That night, Larissa stared at her own reflection for long minutes. At what point did I stop being me? The question hung in the air, unanswered. Because sometimes, the shame doesn't come from what other people say. It comes from what you see in yourself, when no one else needs to point it out. 2 weeks after the trip, life went on, but not as before. It was a practical, cold coexistence, more like a silent partnership than a marriage. Larissa and I saw each other every day, but we never truly met. She made an effort to be present. She took part in the routine, sat close, tried to start conversations. But there was something in her eyes that had already surrendered. I know it's not the same. Then the invitation came. On a Wednesday afternoon, Raphael stopped by her office and said, casually, "There's a director's dinner next month. You're an important part of the team now. It would be good for you to be there. It's a more private setting, less formal." He said it while looking her in the eye, with that same tone, disguised as neutrality, that she now knew so well. It wasn't an invitation. It was a test. She just nodded with a professional smile. But inside, her stomach turned. It wasn't just about the dinner. It was about everything that came with it. The insinuations, the risks, the chance to repeat the mistake, or to feed another lie. That night, for the first time since her return, she wanted to talk to me. I waited for Lucas to fall asleep. Then she called me over. She was nervous, a poorly rehearsed sincerity. She sat in front of me, her hands clasped together. Raphael invited me to a director's dinner. It's a company thing. I thought I should tell you. I stayed silent, waiting for what else would come. She hesitated but continued. I realize now, after everything, that maybe he had other intentions on that trip. I swear I didn't see it at the time. I really didn't. The lie was there, not in the words, but in her tone. She wasn't telling me the truth. She was telling me a version where she could still be the victim. Nothing happened. Nothing beyond professional. I was uncomfortable, yes. But I never encouraged anything. Now I'm trying to set boundaries. I looked at her for a few seconds. You only realized it after? Yes. I was caught up in our problems. I felt alone, vulnerable. But I swear I didn't see any ill will. I understood. She wanted me to believe her, but she also wanted me to say that everything would be okay. I didn't. I got up from the chair, went to the sink, and poured a glass of water. She sat there quietly, and in that moment, she understood. It no longer mattered what she said. The part of me that believed her was no longer available. Even so, in the days that followed, Larissa tried. She made dinner with more care, sent me messages during the day, watched the movies I liked. She sat next to me as if wanting to go back. But you can't go back in time. And she knew it. She realized I was staying only for Lucas, that my affection towards her was just a reflection of responsibility. My presence wasn't out of love, it was for structure. Still, she clung to the idea that if I hadn't left, that was something. And so she began to accept a lukewarm life, a marriage without affection, a functional home, an empty companionship held together by a boy who still dreamed of seeing his parents sleeping in the same bed. She began to settle for this, for my presence, even without warmth, for the routine, even without passion, for the silence, as long as I didn't decide to leave. And it was in that silence that she began to die inside, slowly, knowingly. In the days after our conversation about the dinner, something in me began to shift. It wasn't a sudden snap, not a clear decision. It was like a low-grade fever that slowly builds until your whole body is hot. I stopped feeling angry, and in the place of anger, exhaustion set in. A weariness that wasn't physical or even emotional. It was existential. I would find myself walking through the house, my gaze lost, just going through the motions, fulfilling my roles. Father, worker, man of the house. But husband? No. That role no longer made sense to me. I started going out more. At first, with simple excuses. I have to take care of a few things. I'm stopping by my brother's. I'm taking Lucas for a walk. Then I started going out alone. And slowly, I began to remember who I was before the two of us existed. I went to the movies on a Saturday night, alone, for the first time in years. I bought popcorn, sat in the back row. I watched the film without really paying attention, but I felt at peace. I remembered there was a world outside that house, outside that pain. Meanwhile, Larissa continued her silent mission of reconstruction. She made breakfast, made the bed, left little notes with short phrases. Have a good meeting. I bought your favorite juice. Lucas is excited to see you. But there were no I love yous. Not from me, not from her. Because we both knew. Love doesn't survive on effort alone. It needs truth. And truth, in that house, was a rare commodity. One night, during dinner, she tried. You seem different. I'm tired. Of me? Of everything. She swallowed her tears, and she smiled. A smile I recognized. The same one from before the trip. The smile of someone who no longer knows how to reach the person in front of them. The following Sunday, the three of us went to the supermarket. She had insisted on a family outing. Lucas was quiet in the back seat. On the way, she placed her hand over mine on the gear shift. I didn't pull away, but I didn't squeeze back either. It was enough for Lucas to ask, out of nowhere, Are you guys okay? Of course we are, son, she answered, too quickly. He was quiet for a few seconds. Then he spoke, without raising his voice. Are you guys pretending? The question landed in the car, like silent thunder. No one answered. No one had to. That night, Larissa went into his room to say goodnight. Lucas was already in bed, but he was awake. Are you sad, Mom? I'm trying to get better. Daddy doesn't want to be your boyfriend anymore, does he? She held back a sob. Maybe he just needs some time. But time doesn't make you like someone again. She left his room, her breath caught in her chest. In the living room, she found me with my phone in my hand. I was looking at old photos, not smiling, just observing. She sat down next to me. She didn't ask for an explanation. She didn't try to make conversation. Because deep down, she already knew. I was still there, but I was no longer hers. And the only thing keeping her on her feet was the fact that I was still there. It didn't start on a specific day. It was gradual, a slight discomfort that grew and grew inside me. The feeling that if I stayed there, trapped in a loveless structure, I would fade away completely. I started waking up with a swollen face, with no desire to look in the mirror. I had stopped taking care of myself. I lost myself trying to hold up something that had already collapsed. Then one day, I went for a run. Nothing grand, just an old pair of sneakers, a worn out t shirt, and a lap around the block. But I came back different. In the days that followed, I kept running. I started eating better, sleeping earlier, listening to music again. Simple things, but they brought back a part of me I didn't even know I had abandoned. I started losing weight. My posture changed. The swelling in my face went down. My gaze became firmer. My breathing, lighter. I started talking to old colleagues again, people I had pushed aside when the marriage took up all the space. I reactivated a reading group I had been a part of years ago. I began attending company events more often, and without realizing it, I started to attract attention. The receptionist in our building smiled more when I arrived. A colleague commented, "You look different, almost younger." I gave a half embarrassed smile, but inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. I felt alive. It happened on a Saturday. I went with Lucas to a school gathering. A few fathers, a few mothers, light conversation. Among them was Renata, the mother of one of his classmates. I vaguely remembered her, but this time she approached me with an easy smile. "You're Lucas's dad, right?" "I am, and you're Arthur's mom, if I'm not mistaken." "That's me. We've crossed paths a few times, but you always seemed so closed off." I was going through some complicated phases. And now, I'm relearning how to breathe. She laughed. "Breathe well then. It's working." We talked for almost an hour. We exchanged contacts, nothing forced. It was light, natural, a kind of genuine interest. On the way home, Larissa saw my phone vibrate. Renata had sent a simple message. "It was really nice talking to you today." She saw it. She pretended not to care. But her eyes, they said everything. The next day she remarked, "You've been more vain lately." "I'm taking care of myself." "For who?" "For me." Silence. The kind that speaks volumes. Later, she started watching me from a distance, with too much attention. The way you look at someone who was once yours, but you no longer know where they belong. Maybe she finally realized that the man who stayed on the couch while she left with a suitcase in her hand was not the same one living there now. She started treating me differently, more attentive, more careful. But it was too late. I had already understood. My life didn't need to revolve around her. Larissa began to observe more than she acted. It was as if she were studying a new man inside her own home. someone who spoke little but said so much with his very presence. Andre, now more confident, serene, centered, was not the same man she had left with a patched up heart, hugging their son on the sofa as she walked out. He wasn't hostile, nor was he so distant as to seem absent. He was there, present with Lucas, fulfilling his roles naturally. But with her, it was different. When Larissa tried to start a conversation, he would respond, without aggression, but without enthusiasm. When she tried to provoke a more intimate talk, he would sidestep it. When she dressed up, trying to draw a glance, he would offer a polite smile and return to what he was doing. And this ate away at her. She tried not to show it, but her eyes betrayed her. She watched his body changing. The posture, the more defined, firmer face, the new cologne, the slightly better fitting clothes. She saw the reflection of something that was once hers alone. And now it was his alone. And perhaps it belonged to whoever else knew how to see what she had failed to preserve. She started to notice the women around him. She saw the way some neighbors greeted him with longer smiles. She noticed the time he took to reply to messages, the care he took with what he posted, and with what he kept hidden. One day, she noticed he had taken off his wedding ring. Just like that, it was gone. No warning, no conversation. It just wasn't there. She didn't have the courage to ask. That night, she tried to get closer. Do you want to watch a movie with me tonight? I think I'll go to bed early. We barely do anything together anymore. Because we don't have anything together anymore, Larissa. Silence. She wanted to react, to say it was unfair, that he wasn't even trying. But she knew she couldn't demand effort now, not after she had stopped trying so long ago. Later, she heard Lucas talking to a toy in his room. She went to the door. She peeked in. He was saying, "If mommy and daddy don't stay together, it's okay. I'll stay a little with each of them." He paused, then added, "But I think daddy is already leaving." Just very, very slowly. Larissa leaned her forehead against the wall. She closed her eyes, swallowed hard. It was in that moment she realized she no longer had control of the story. She wasn't holding the marriage together anymore. She was just trying to stop the free fall with empty hands. The fear of loss? It was here now. But it was too late, because what she feared losing was already out of her reach. I stayed, not because I forgave her, not because I loved her again, and certainly not because there was any future for us. I stayed for Lucas, because when you have a child, you understand that the best choice isn't always the easiest. And I knew what would come if I left now. Larissa was emotionally unstable, guilty, needy, and more than anything, she had a tendency to cling to any affection disguised as attention. If I left, it wouldn't be long before some new coworker appeared, before some distraction became a companion. And I couldn't stand the thought of Lucas growing up in a revolving door of men who wouldn't see him as a son, but as an obstacle. No, he didn't deserve that, so I stayed, but not like before. I stayed as a free man inside my own home, without promises, without a wedding ring, without the obligation to smile when I didn't want to. I started setting boundaries. I didn't have to say anything. She understood. There were no more unnecessary touches, no more kisses on the cheek, No more dinners for two. Our routine revolved around Lucas, only him. Even so, Larissa clung to my presence like someone holding a faint flame in her bare hands, not to rekindle it, but to stop the darkness from taking over completely. She began to live between maintaining her image and trying to remain dignified in the house where, once, she had been loved. At work, she tried to rebuild her reputation. She stopped accepting informal invitations. She distanced herself from Raphael, who, after their trip, began treating her with an indifference that hurt more than any words. She had to face the price of her choice. And it came in silence. In the place where she once felt recognized, she was now met with suspicion. She had to swallow the cut-off laughter, the sideways glances, the whispers of her colleagues, and the jokes from the men. Rebuilding respect takes years. Destroying it takes one trip. Meanwhile, I continued with my life. From the inside out, I started to respect myself more, to live better, to take up space, to find myself again. There were women who looked at me differently now, who chose me with their eyes. And that, I confess, felt good. But it wasn't about revenge or about cheating. It was about remembering who I was before I put myself second for someone who didn't know what she wanted. Sometimes, Larissa would watch me in silence. She knew I was no longer hers, but she clung to the fact that I was still there. And for her, that was enough. Even if at night she lay beside me with the feeling that the space between us was wider than the bed. Because now she understood. I stayed. But I never truly came back, and so we continued. On the outside, a family. In the school group chats, at Sunday gatherings, in the supermarket line, we were Lucas's parents. A partnership, organized, present. But on the inside, there was no couple. There was a civilized coexistence, sustained by a purpose greater than love, the well-being of our son. I made my decision with my feet on the ground. I didn't stay for Larissa. I stayed for Lucas, for his right to grow up with stability, to come home and see us both there, for the duty that is being a father every single day. Even if the husband in me had ceased to exist a long time ago, Larissa understood this, not in words, but in the emptiness between us. She stopped trying to reconnect, stopped insisting on gestures, forced smiles, attempts at us. She contented herself with what was left: the presence, the structure, the idea that even without love, having someone nearby was more than she deserved. After the choice she made, deep down, I knew. Other men might appear in her path: colleagues, bosses, curious strangers. But I also knew. Now she would look at each of them with the weight of her guilt, with the suspicion that is born when you cross a line and see the damage up close. She would never forget that between the heat of the moment and the coldness of the consequence, she chose to cross that line. Lucas grew up, a little quieter, a little more mature than he should have been, but with a present father and a repentant mother. Sometimes he looks at me as if he knows. You stayed for me, and only for me. One of those nights, as I was closing his bedroom door, he asked me, "Do you still love Mommy?" I thought. I took a breath. "I love you, And that's what matters now. He smiled, as if he understood more than he should. He hugged me. I went back to my room. Larissa was already in bed, her back to me. Life went on, cold, calm, predictable. We stayed, but never again as before. She came back, but what they had between them did not. He stayed, but not for her. They remained like survivors of a shipwreck, deciding to care for the only lifeboat that still mattered, their son. Today, they live under the same roof, but not in the same place. She learned, too late, that some choices can be returned from, but they can never be repaired, and he had nothing left to offer but his presence. Now the question is, if it were you, would you have stayed? Would you have done the same for your child, even with a broken heart? Or would you have rebuilt your life far from the one who betrayed you in silence? Comment below. The Echoes of Temptation channel wants to know. What would you do in his place? If this story has kept you here until the end, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. Because in the next episode, temptation might knock on another door. But ah, the echo will be just as strong. And maybe this time, someone will choose not to stay.